Today, we're diving into one of the biggest challenges in medicine. How does a brilliant idea from a lab actually become a treatment that can help someone with a disease like ALS? It's a path that's full of promise, but there's this hidden gap, a chasm really, where so many amazing discoveries get lost.
So let's just start with the big question right up front. I mean, you hear about scientific breakthroughs all the time, but why do so many of them never make it to the people who are waiting for them? It's a really tough problem. And to get to the solution, you've got to understand what's going wrong in the first place.
All right, let's get into it. The problem actually has a name, and it sounds pretty intense because, well, it is. They call it the Valley of Death, and it's that huge critical gap that sits right between a discovery and a potential cure.
Think about the whole journey like this. Over on one side, you've got your basic scientific discovery, finding a gene that's causing a problem. Way over on the other side, you have an actual therapy for patients. But smack in the middle, that's the valley. It's this enormous, expensive, difficult space where most projects just die.
Okay, so what does that actually mean? Well, university labs, they're incredible at that first step, the discovery part. But they're not set up to be drug companies. And then you have the big pharmaceutical companies who, understandably, don't want to invest millions of dollars until an idea has been seriously tested and proven. And so, these great ideas get stranded, with no one to provide the money, the tools, or the specific expertise to see if they're the real deal.
But what if you could build a bridge over that valley? That's exactly where a special kind of organization comes in. We're going to look at the role of what are called translational accelerators.
And that's it, right there. This is their whole purpose for existing. These groups were created for one reason and one reason only: to find the most promising science stuck in that valley and give it the muscle it needs to get across to the other side.
And the work they do is called translational research. It's all the nitty-gritty stuff that happens in the middle. It's about taking that aha moment from a lab and turning it into something real, a drug candidate that you can actually test. It's the absolutely essential but often forgotten step on the road to a cure.
Now look, this isn't just a cool theory. It is happening right now. And in the world of ALS research, there are some serious players leading the way. So let's meet three of the organizations that are changing the game.
First up is the ALS Therapy Development Institute. You'll hear it called ALS-TDI. These guys are unique because they basically operate like a full-on biotech company. They have their own labs, doing their own drug discovery, all under a non-profit model. They're a real powerhouse.
Then you've got Target ALS. Their big idea was to build something they call an innovation ecosystem. What they're doing is breaking down the walls that usually separate academic labs and drug companies, making it easier for everyone to work together and share tools.
And finally, we have the ALS Association's CREATE program. You can think of them almost like a strategic investment fund. They find the most promising projects and give them that targeted funding and support they need to get to the next level.
And this lays it out perfectly. You can see how they have these different but totally complementary ways of tackling the problem. ALS-TDI is the nonprofit biotech doing the work in-house. Target ALS is the ecosystem builder, all about collaboration. And the CREATE program is that smart investor, injecting cash and resources exactly where they're needed most.
Okay, so we know who they are, but how do they actually do this? What's in the toolkit that lets them turn raw science into a real solution?
It really comes down to providing the heavy-duty stuff that a typical university lab just doesn't have. We're talking about huge automated drug screening platforms, developing biomarkers to see if a drug is working, creating better disease models in cells and animals to test things on, and just the whole infrastructure you need for that early drug development.
And the scale here is it's hard to wrap your head around. With high-throughput screening, they can test literally millions of chemical compounds to see if any of them might work against ALS. It's like trying to find a single key that fits a lock in a pile of millions of keys, but you have a robot that can test them all at lightning speed.
Another tool that's an absolute game changer is the biomarker. Think of it as a biological signal, an early sign. Instead of waiting for months or even years to see if a patient's symptoms are improving, a biomarker can tell you if a drug is actually doing what it's supposed to do on a biological level way sooner. That makes clinical trials faster, cheaper, and a whole lot more efficient.
And that's really the whole point of all this. Every single one of these tools is designed to do one thing: de-risk the entire process. By doing all this super rigorous testing before a drug ever gets to a person, they make sure that only the best of the best, the most promising therapies, actually move forward. And that saves an incredible amount of time, money, and most importantly, it protects the hope of patients.
So, what does this all mean for the future of the fight against ALS? How does all this bridge building actually change the outlook for people living with the disease? Well, the impact is pretty dramatic. This chart really says it all. Because of the work these accelerators are doing, right now there are more potential ALS therapies in the development pipeline than at any other time in history. It's not even close. The pipeline is just packed with possibilities. And as science itself gets more and more advanced, the role of these accelerators is only going to become more critical. You think about things like gene therapies, RNA medicines, using AI to discover drugs. All of that amazing stuff still needs to cross the valley. These are the organizations that will help get it there. Which brings us to this quote, which I think just perfectly sums up the impact. By building that bridge, these groups make sure that amazing discoveries don't just stay as papers in a journal. Instead, quote, they move steadily toward becoming real therapies capable of changing the future of ALS.
So we can end on this thought. That valley of death, it isn't this impossible barrier anymore. A bridge is being built piece by dedicated piece. So the question isn't really if we can turn scientific possibilities into clinical realities anymore. The real question is, with this new accelerated model, how fast can we make it happen?